I didn't move her SUV. I didn't tow it. I didn't even walk close enough to leave a fingerprint when that white luxury tank, polished like a showroom trophy, ended up nose deep in a trench on my property. It happened because she told me to hit the switch. And gravity, being the most honest force on Earth, simply obeyed. But that moment, the screaming and the mud and the sheriff arriving with that slow, disappointed walk, none of it made sense unless you understand where it all started. And it started with peace. Real peace, the kind you can hear. For almost 20 years, I worked in logistics, engineering, designing systems, building workflows, solving problems that never thanked you back. I was good at it, maybe too good, because companies love squeezing every drop out of someone who performs well. The nights got longer, the calls got earlier, and one evening in a break room that smelled like burnt coffee and stale air, I realized I was designing efficiency for everyone except myself. So I walked away from that life and bought 70 acres in rural Nebraska. Not glamorous land, not investment land, just honest earth. A creek on the east side, a leaning barn that needed more nails than I owned, a farmhouse that creaked every time the wind changed direction. And best of all, the entire property sat outside the boundary of the sprawling HOA next door. I fixed the barn with my own hands, patched the farmhouse roof, planted corn and soybeans, and brought in a small herd of cattle. My days grew predictable in the best Waysonrise work. Sunset, rest. No meetings, no deadlines, no supervisors breathing down my neck. Just the land, the animals, and enough silence to hear myself think. For 3 years, no one from that HOA world bothered me. I'd see their matching rooftops on the horizon, their triple-wide driveways, their synchronized trash cans lined up like parade formations, but they kept to themselves, and I kept to my land. Then one Thursday afternoon, I heard an engine approaching, not the low rumble of a farm truck or the chugging rhythm of a tractor. This sound was smooth, expensive, humming like entitlement on 4 wheels. When I stepped around the corner of the barn, I saw an immaculate white luxury SUV rolling down my private drive with the confidence of a VIP guest arriving at a gala, and the woman driving it. She was the exact caricature of an HOA enforcer, only real overweight, wrapped in a bright pink blazer, straining at the seams, a floral blouse buttoned high under her pearl necklace, blue jeans pressed stiff, and sunglasses so oversized they looked like tinted shields. She stepped out like the land itself owed her applause. At first, I assumed she was lost. Happens a lot this far from town. I raised a hand to wave her down. Instead, she turned off the gravel and drove straight into my corn. Tires sank deep, snapping young stalks, carving a crooked scar through the field. She parked there, crooked, muddy, absolutely unconcerned. Dan stepped out as if this were her personal driveway. "Ma'am," I called, keeping my voice calm. "This is private property." She didn't look at me. She didn't apologize. She didn't even pause. She tossed her hair, locked her SUV, and started walking toward the HOA neighborhood. I tried again. "You can't park here." This time she stopped, turning her head slowly like she was annoyed. Gravity forced her to acknowledge me. "Relax," she said. "It's just grass." "It's corn," I corrected. She lowered her sunglasses just enough for me to see her eyes sharp, dismissive, amused. Then she laughed. Not kindly. Not nervously. A laugh that said she believed the world arranged itself for her convenience. "This area has always been common access," she declared. "We use it for overflow parking. The HOA documents it. There was no such document. No such access. No such right." But she waved me off like a nuisance. "I'll only be an hour," and she walked away, leaving her SUV tilted in the field. Mud splashed up the doors. My young corn crushed beneath her tires. The first incident shows you who a person is, and she had just shown me everything. There was no such document. No such access. No such right. But she waved me off like a nuisance. "I'll only be an hour," and she walked away, leaving her SUV tilted in the field. Mud splashed up the doors. my young corn crushed beneath her tires. The first incident shows you who a person is, and she had just shown me everything. And right on cue, the white luxury tank bounced off the HOA road and nosed its way into my field again. No sign of embarrassment. If anything, she drove deeper this time, carving a fresh path across the young corn I'd spent weeks planting. She parked nearly in the same spot, almost like she was hitting a personal checkpoint, and stepped out wearing the same bright pink blazer, floral blouse, pearls, and oversized sunglasses. Her uniform of entitlement. She didn't look in my direction at all. She didn't pretend she didn't see me. She simply left her SUV sitting in the field, locked it, and strutted toward her neighborhood with that sharp, marching stride. I walked to her vehicle and placed my hand on the hood. Still warm. Fresh tire marks cut diagonally through the rows, meant to feed cattle, meant to pay my bills, meant to keep this farm alive. A single careless path from her cost me hours of labor and real money. This wasn't confusion. This was habit. And habits like hers don't stay small. By the third time she came, I wasn't surprised anymore. But the escalation, that surprised even me. It was early morning, a thin fog hugging the ground. I was checking the fence line when suddenly a roar tore across the field. Not the steady hum of her usual arrival. This was aggressive. Fast. Reckless. I turned just in time to see the SUV barreling across the grass like she was trying to set a personal speed record. Dirt flew behind her in a rooster tail, corn snapped beneath her tires, and her window was down. I could hear her actually laughing over the music blasting from her speakers. She honked twice as she passed, like she was greeting a neighbor she knew she was tormenting. Later that evening, around the same time, she repeated the exact maneuver. Same speed, same path. Same chaos. She was using my field like a shortcut to avoid the HOA's winding streets, a straight line across my livelihood, for the sake of shaving off a minute of her commute, and she didn't keep the bad habit to herself. Within a week, more SUVs began following her lead. Minivans, sedans. Even a college kid in a rusty compact car who waved at me cheerfully like I was the parking attendant. They drove across my land in little convoys, treating it like community property. But Karen, the pink blazer, generata remained the ring. Sometimes she'd pull right into the middle of the field, stop, roll her window down, and start yelling into her phone like she was giving a speech to an invisible audience. Other times she'd leave her engine idling for 10 minutes, letting exhaust cloud over the pasture while she rummaged carelessly through her trunk. Then came the moment I'll never forget. One windy afternoon, she brought her tiny designer dog, the kind that shakes more than it walks, and let it roam freely across my grazing area. My cattle spooked instantly, startled by the barking and sharp movements. They scattered, panicked, and one of my younger heifers twisted her leg trying to escape the yapping animal. I confronted Karen when she came back. "Your dog nearly injured my livestock," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. She rolled her eyes. "Maybe train your cows to be less dramatic." That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not anger burns out. Something colder, steadier. The realization that she wasn't ignorant. She wasn't misinformed. She wasn't even rude. She was claiming my land. A week later, the situation hit a breaking point. I woke one morning to find 3 vehicles parked neatly in my lower field, like it was a designated lot. A baby shower was happening in the neighborhood, and apparently Karen had spread the word that the farm guy doesn't mind. One woman, heels sinking into the mud, waved at me with a bright smile. "Thank you for letting us park here," she called. "The cul-de-sac is full." I didn't answer. I just turned around, walked back to the barn, sat down on a hay bale, and stared at the ground. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. It was an invasion, one she had orchestrated, and whether I liked it or not, she was forcing me toward a decision. The land can take a beating. Fences can be repaired. Soil can be tilled again. Seedlings can be but animals feel everything. And when they suffer, the damage goes deeper than mud and tire ruts. It happened late in the afternoon. The sky low and gray, carrying that strange quiet that tells you something is about to go wrong. I was tending to Daisy, one of my gentlest heifer, soft brown coat, calm eyes, always the first to nudge my hand for feed. She was pregnant with her second calf, and I'd been keeping a close eye on her. She grazed near the western fence that day, right where my cornfield met the property line. I remember patting her side, feeling her steady breath as she chewed. That was the last peaceful moment we had. Then I heard her engine again, but this time it wasn't the smug hum I'd gotten used to. This was sharper, faster, meaner. I turned. The white luxury SUV was tearing across my field like she was attempting a stunt for an action movie. Windows down, music blaring, wind dripping her floral blouse against a bright pink blazer. She wasn't driving across my land. This time she was charging through it. She swerved toward the grazing area. A wave of dirt and rocks shot up from her tires. The spray hit Daisy's legs. My heifer panicked instantly. She stumbled, bolted, slipped in the softened ground, and then she fell head onto her hip with a thud that I felt in my own chest. I dropped everything and ran. By the time I reached her, the SUV was already disappearing behind the HOA tree line. Karen's laughter echoing faintly across the field. Daisy lay trembling, one leg curled awkwardly beneath her, her breaths panicked and shallow. I knelt beside her and pressed my forehead to her neck, whispering, "Easy, girl. You're all right. I'm here." But she wasn't all right. That evening, I called the vet. He examined her, frowning deeper with every touch. "Bruising," he said. "Stress spasms. Elevated heart rate." She got scared bad. His tone shifted lower. "Stress this close to calving. It can cause complications." I stayed with her the entire night, the barn lantern casting long shadows, while she struggled to settle. Every groan, every tremble, felt like a hit to my ribs. Before sunrise, Daisy miscarried. A stillborn calf, small and motionless, lay in the straw. No sound, no breath, no chance. I sat beside her for a long time, not moving, letting her nudge the calf gently, as if she didn't understand why it wouldn't respond. Animals grieve, and Daisy grieved in a way that made my hands shake. This wasn't about corn anymore. It wasn't about mud or ruts or crushed seedlings. Tease was armed to a living creature that had trusted me. And the worst part, Karen didn't even know what she caused. And if she did, she wouldn't have cared. 2 days later, before the ache in my chest even faded, things escalated again. I stepped outside that morning and froze. My lower field, still raw from Daisy's fall, was filled with cars again. Not one or two, 3 separate vehicles, parked in neat rows like someone had drawn lines for them. "A baby shower in the neighborhood," someone said. "Just park on the farm guy's land, he doesn't mind." One woman waved at me cheerfully, heels sinking into the mud. "Thank you for letting us park here. HOA events are such a hassle." I stood still, listening to the hum of their engines, the idle chatter, the laughter drifting over my broken land. Something inside me, something I didn't know I'd been holding back, snapped into perfect, cold clarity. Talking hadn't worked. Warnings hadn't worked. Legal steps hadn't worked. The sheriff had already been manipulated by her once. Karen, this woman, in her bright pink blazer, floral blouse, pearl necklace, and sunglasses the size of wind shears, believed my land was hers to command. She believed my boundaries didn't apply to her world. But land has a way of teaching lessons, and I finally understood what had to be done. She wasn't going to stop on her own, so I was going to make her. After Daisy's miscarriage, the farm felt different. Not quieter, just heavier, like the ground itself remembered what happened. I'd walk past the grazing area and feel that knot in my chest tighten all over again. It wasn't just trespassing anymore. It wasn't inconvenience. It was cruelty through carelessness, and the kind that leaves real damage. That's when I knew talking wouldn't fix anything. Karen didn't respond to warnings. Karen didn't respond to consequences. Karen didn't respond to empathy, reason, or the law. So I needed something she could not ignore, something legal, documented, and impossible for her to twist into a weapon against me. Before I lifted a single piece of wood, I called my attorney, Jim Sutton. I told him the general idea, careful not to make it sound like anything illegal or dangerous. A platform that tilts under weight, a gravity slide, a mud catch basin at the edge of my property line. On the phone, he went silent for a long moment. Then he sighed. Marcus? Technically, if it's clearly marked, if no one is harmed, and if gravity does the work, not you, it isn't illegal. He paused again. And for your own sake, don't call it a catapult. I promised. Once the legal groundwork was solid, I began building. The concept was simple. A sturdy, wooden platform disguised as a normal piece of level ground. A hidden hinge system beneath it. A detent lock that released the tilts when triggered. A smooth slope that guided anything parked on top down into the mud trench I'd dug her. Nothing violent, nothing unsafe, just physics clean and controlled. I used old barn beams for the frame, thick and seasoned, steel hinges underneath. Gravel to disguise the approach. A weight-based mechanism calibrated so it wouldn't tilt under a wandering deer or a misplaced hay bale, but would absolutely respond to the weight of a fully loaded luxury SUV. Testing came next. First, a heavy hay bale. Then an old water tank. Then the real test, my beat-up Ford farm truck. I eased it onto the platform, turned off the engine, climbed down, and took a deep breath. Then I pulled the release. Clunk! The metal lock snapped. The platform dipped. The truck slid backwards, smoother than I imagined, no jerking. No danger, just one clean motion, almost graceful. At the bottom, I settled into the mud trench with a satisfying, thick squelch. Not a scratch on it. Engine started right up. If anything, the landing was softer than half the potholes on the county road. That was the moment I smiled smiled for the first time in months. But the machine alone wasn't enough. I needed documentation layered thick enough to survive a courtroom battle, so I went overboard. I posted industrial-grade warning signs around the area. Danger, active farm machinery, automated tilting platform, unsafe for vehicles. Private property, no OA access. I photographed each sign, time-stamped, everything. Filed copies with Jim, emailed a notice to the county, even sent a safety advisory to the sheriff's office. Karen couldn't claim ignorance. She would have to choose to ignore the warnings. But I still needed bait, something irresistible to a woman who treated boundaries like suggestions. So I swept the platform clean, smoothed the boards, laid a small gravel ramp leading to it, and then installed the perfect lure, a shiny new sign that read, VIP parking, authorized personnel only, the kind of sign you would expect in a gated subdivision, the kind of sign someone like Karen believed was created specifically for her. When I hammered it into place, I stepped back and looked at the whole system. A platform hiding in plain sight, a hinge calibrated like a piece of fine machinery, a mud trench waiting gently at the bottom, and enough warnings to protect me from every angle. I didn't know exactly when she would come, but I knew she would. People like her cannot resist to things, ignoring boundaries, and claiming privileges that don't belong to them. And the day she took the bait, everything would change. For 3 days after the machine was finished, I waited, not with impatience waning as part of a farmer's rhythm, but with a steady certainty. When you plant a seed, you know it will sprout. Karen's habits worked the same way. She was predictable, entitled, drawn to anything that looked like it was meant for someone important. And that VIP sign, that was the hook. On the morning of the 4th day, sunlight stretched across the field in warm stripes. The wind was still, the kind of calm that makes sound carry farther. I stepped onto the porch with a mug of coffee and looked toward the west field. There she was. Her white luxury SUV, a rolling pearl on wheels, glided across the HOA road and onto my land like she owned both. That bright pink blazer flashed through the windshield as she leaned forward, spotting the platform. Even from a distance, I saw the moment she noticed the shiny new sign. VIP parking, authorized personnel only. Her chin lifted, her posture straightened, and she accelerated. I walked to the barn, set up my camera, and started the cloud backup documentation had become second nature by then. I grabbed a megaphone, stepped out into the sunlight, and positioned myself far enough to avoid her theatrics, but close enough to be heard. The SUV rolled onto the platform with a soft wooden thunk, her wheels settling into the shallow grooves I'd sanded in. She idled confidently, like she was waiting for applause. I lifted the megaphone. "Attention, driver of the white SUV," I called across the field. "You are parked on active farm machinery. Move your vehicle immediately." She snapped her head toward me, lowering her oversized sunglasses just enough to glare. "Oh, please," she shouted. "Your scare tactics are pathetic." I tried. "Again, come steady," each word precise. "This area is unsafe. You have 10 seconds to vacate. This is an automated tilting platform." She revved the engine as if mocking me. Then she leaned her elbow out the window, her floral blouse tightening at the seams, and gave me one proud "This mi siba Hester," her middle finger aimed at the sky. The air held still for a beat. I raised the megaphone once more. "Ma'am, this is your final warning. If you do not move your vehicle, the system will activate. Gravity will do the rest." Her laugh cracked across the field, sharp as gravel on metal. "You want me to move?" she screamed. Then she leaned out the window further and shouted, "Do it." It was the moment I had been waiting for, not out of revenge, but clarity. She had made her choice in front of the camera, in front of warnings, in front of the law. I reached for the release. Leva hidden beside the fence, post the simple wooden handle that controlled the descent lock. Time seemed to thicken for one breath. Even the birds went quiet. 10, clank, a clean, heavy snap of steel. The platform dipped, smooth as the first second of a roller coaster. The SUV shifted. Karen's face flickered from triumph to confusion, to panic in less than a heartbeat. And 10 woos. The vehicle slid backward in one perfect, uninterrupted motion, the tilt guiding it like rails. No violence, no impact, just physics doing exactly what it was designed to do. The SUV hit the mud trench with a deep, wet squelch, mud exploding upward across the gleaming white paint. The engine sputtered, coughed twice, and died. Karen sat frozen behind the wheel, sunglasses crooked on her face, mouth open in disbelief. She finally pushed the door open, mud sucking at it like glue, and stepped into the trench. One shoe vanished immediately into the muck. She yanked it free with a sound that echoed off the barn. Then she pointed at me, shaking with fury. "You assaulted me. You trapped me. You could have killed me." Her voice cracked in hysteria as she waded through the mud, her pink blazer now streaked with brown. I kept the camera steady. "Karen," I said slowly, "you were warned. Multiple times. Everything is recorded." "No, it isn't!" she screamed, and then ironically sealing her fate, I hit playback. Her voice boomed from the camera. "Do it." Her face drained of color. The mud around her seemed more stable than she did in that moment. "You're finished!" she shrieked. "My husband will sue you. The HOA will take your entire farm." I didn't respond, because at that very moment I heard the familiar rumble of Sheriff Morrison's cruiser coming down my gravel drive, and Karen's expression collapsed completely. Gravity had finally taught her the one lesson she never expected to learn. Boundaries don't move for people who refuse to see them. Sheriff Morrison stepped out of his cruiser with the look of a man who already regretted answering this call. He took in the scene. Slow, Letha tilted platform. The mud trench. Karen ankle-deep, in filth, with her pink blazer smeared brown, and her SUV sitting crooked like a beached whale. She rushed toward him, arms flitting, mud launching off her sleeves. "Officer! Officer! He tried to kill me." "Say, wait." The sheriff blinked once. "Ma'am, where exactly do you see a cliff?" she sputtered, waving a muddy hand at the platform. He used a catapult. I raised a finger. Gravity-assisted tilt. Documented. Visible signage everywhere. Karen screamed. "He's lying." I pressed play on the video. We all heard her voice echo across the field again. Do it. The sheriff's jaw tightened not in anger, but in the kind of exhausted amusement law enforcement develops after years on the job. He turned to Karen and spoke very softly, the way you speak to a child about to touch a hot stove. Ma'am, you were warned multiple times. On camera, she stumbled backward, sinking deeper into the mud, her pearl necklace half buried and dangling like it wanted to escape. That's when she tried a different tactic. She dialed her husband. Richard, he sabotaged me. He destroyed our car. On speaker, her husband's sigh was loud enough to echo. Karen, I told you to stop going on that man's property. She froze, stunned. But Richard, supposed to defend me. I'm trying to defend our insurance rate, he said, and you're standing in mud again, aren't you? Before she could answer, he hung up. The sheriff pinched the bridge of his nose and pulled out his citation book. Ma'am, I'm issuing charges for a criminal trespass and property damage. You can't, she shrieked. I'm the victim. Sheriff Morrison didn't even raise his voice. No, ma'am. The only thing harmed here is the mud and your vehicle. Her mouth fell open like a barn door caught in a windstorm. Just then, the tow truck rolled in old Walt behind the wheel. Whistling like this was the highlight of his week. He surveyed the muddy disaster with a grin. Well, now, that's totaled. Karen let out a noise halfway between a sob and a squeal. Walt continued. Unfazed, differentials full of mud. Sensors fried, undercarriage bent. CHA-SSIS, probably warped. You're looking at 12, maybe 15,000 in repairs, if they bother repairing it at all. He hooked her SUV, the chains rattling, mud peeling away with a long, wet rip that sounded like the land itself was happy to let go. Karen's hands trembled as she checked her phone. A new email popped up, her insurance claim denial. Insurance does not cover damages resulting from willful trespassing or the active ignoring of posted safety warnings, she read aloud. At Thibault Tome. Additionally, gravity experiments are not considered accidental. She sank onto a patch of dry dirt, staring blankly at nothing. For the first time since I met her, she looked small. The sheriff closed his notebook. Ma'am, you'll receive your court date in the mail. He guided her toward the cruiser. She tried one last glare at me, mud dripping from her pearls. You'll regret this, she whispered. I looked her in the eye. I gave you 6 months of chances. She blinked, just once, and the sheriff shut the door. Walt drove away with the SUV, and the field finally fell silent. A silence I had earned. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived, not from Karen, not from her husband, but from the new acting HOA board president. A short, almost embarrassed paragraph. We do not endorse Mrs. Poulin's actions. Her behavior does not represent our community. We apologize for the repeated trespassing and any distress caused. No signature, just the HOA distancing themselves from the storm they let grow. A week after that, I heard rumors. Karen removed from her HOA board position, her access privileges revoked, her husband moved out. Her SUV officially totaled. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I didn't tell the story to neighbors. I just stepped onto my porch one evening with a cup of coffee and looked across my land. The sun dipped low, turning the fields gold. No teary tracks, no headlights cutting across my pasture, no pink blazer charging through the corn. Just peace, quiet, steady, earned. And when people ask me what happened to Karen's SUV, I give them the same answer every time. I didn't touch it. Gravity did.